20 Iconic Smells of the 1970s. What if a single smell could take you back 50 years in an instant? From sizzling vinyl car seats to the sweet sting of Mimeograph ink, the 1970s were full of unforgettable scents. Let's unlock those memories, hiding in your nose, and take a nostalgic whiff of a decade like no other. Leaded gasoline. Some of the smells from the 1970s are almost impossible to put into words. They weren't just scents. You had to live them, breathe them in, and just be there to understand. One of the strongest examples? Leaded gasoline. Now, technically, that smell had been around long before the 70s, but it was definitely still lingering in that decade. In fact, during the fuel shortages of the time, some folks actually appreciated just being able to smell gas, because it meant there was still some left to pump. Unleaded fuel started showing up in the 70s too, but for a while, leaded gas was still the go-to for many drivers. And yeah, we later found out it was harmful to our health and the environment, but back then, it was just part of life. It had this heavy, almost sweet metallic scent that's hard to forget. Play-Doh. Not long ago, I stumbled upon a fascinating little tidbit. Hasbro officially trademarked the scent of Play-Doh in 2018. Now, if you've ever opened up a can of Play-Doh, you know exactly the smell I'm talking about. It's a nostalgic fragrance that's hard to forget, sweet with hints of vanilla, a subtle muskiness, and an unmistakable salty wheat undertone. It's surprising to think it took over 60 years, from its first appearance back in 1956, for this iconic scent to finally get its own trademark protection. Usually, when you think about trademarking smells, perfume or cologne probably come to mind first, not toys. But Play-Doh isn't just any toy. It's an iconic sensory experience that's deeply tied to memories of childhood for millions of people. Reflecting on this unusual trademark got me reminiscing about other unforgettable scents that defined the 1970s. Some of those fragrances have lingered into the present day, though often they've lost some authenticity along the way. Others, sadly, have disappeared entirely, preserved only in our memories. Vinyl car seats. And if you ever got into a car that had been baking under the sun, especially one with vinyl seats, you know there was a whole other smell waiting for you. That warm, plasticky odor was like a signature scent of summertime in the 70s. Just sliding onto those hot seats in your shorts could leave a memory, both olfactory and physical. Vinyl was everywhere back then, especially in car interiors. It didn't breathe, it stuck to your legs, and it had this artificial rubbery smell that seemed to get stronger the longer it sat in the heat. A 1972 Chevy Nova with stiff vinyl seats? That had a totally different vibe and scent than an 80s Oldsmobile Cutlass with soft velour. Those car interiors didn't just look different, they smelled different too. Tanning oil. In the 1970s, nobody was really thinking about sunscreen the way we do now. Back then, the goal wasn't to block the sun, it was to soak it up. People wanted that deep golden tan, and sunbathing was practically a summertime sport. Most folks didn't even glance at SPF labels. And if they did use something, it was usually tanning oil, not sunblock. Those oils had a signature coconut scent that instantly brings back memories of beach days, poolside lounging, and carefree afternoons in the backyard. Just one whiff of that smell today can transport you back in time, to a vacation, a moment of warmth, or a sun-soaked afternoon with friends. It's one of those scents that never quite leaves you. Sure, we know more now about sun safety, but back then, that coconut aroma meant summer, freedom, and fun in the sun. Record stores and albums. Back in the 1970s, music wasn't just something you listened to, it was an experience. And part of that experience was the smell. Every kid who loved music knew it. Walking into a record store back then was like stepping into another world. The scent was a mix of cardboard sleeves, plastic wrap, new vinyl, and the faint must of paper and ink from old album covers. There was a kind of magic in unwrapping a brand new record, the crinkle of the plastic, the soft puff of air when you slid out the vinyl, and that slightly sweet, rubbery smell of freshly pressed music. These stores weren't like today's big retailers. They had personality, creaky floors, dusty shelves, and a unique atmosphere all their own. Even the lighting felt different. You didn't just go in to buy a record. You hung out, flipped through bins, talked to the staff, and soaked up the scene. And just like that, the scent of those places stuck in your memory, forever tied to your favorite albums. Model glue. If you were into building model cars, airplanes, or ships back in the 1970s, then you definitely remember the smell of model glue. It had this sharp chemical scent that hit you the moment you twisted the cap off the tube. For many kids, it was the smell of creativity, of afternoons spent hunched over the kitchen table, carefully piecing together your next masterpiece. That glue wasn't just sticky, it was strong. So strong, in fact, that parents had to warn kids not to sniff it too much. Polaroid film canisters. Before we had smartphones in every pocket, snapping and sharing photos instantly, there was one magical way to capture the moment and see it right away: the Polaroid camera. In the 1970s, this was cutting-edge stuff. You'd line everyone up, take the picture, and out would slide that square little photo. Then came the fun part: waiting and watching it develop right in front of your eyes. But there's another part of that memory that often gets overlooked: the smell. If you ever handled Polaroid film canisters, you know what I'm talking about. They had this distinct chemical scent, kind of plasticky and slightly metallic, with a hint of something sharp, almost like developer fluid. It wasn't necessarily pleasant, but it was part of the experience. That scent is tied to so many special moments: birthdays, holidays, family trips, or just hanging out with friends. Cap guns. Cap guns were everywhere in the 70s. If you were a kid, chances are you had one, or at least wanted one. The sound, the spark, and most importantly, the smell. After each pop, you'd get this light smoky scent, like a hint of real gunpowder, though it wasn't nearly as strong. It didn't matter if you were a boy or a girl. If you were anywhere near when one of those caps went off, you'd know that smell. It lingered in the air and on your fingers, and somehow made the whole play experience feel more real. Which 1970s scent instantly takes you back to your childhood? Baseball card gum. If you loved baseball, then buying a pack of cards was a rite of passage. And the second you opened that waxy little wrapper, the smell hit you. There was the scent of the cardboard cards themselves, dry, papery, and somehow dusty. And then there was the bubble gum. That hard pink stick wasn't exactly delicious, but it had a unique smell all its own. Sweet, a little chalky, and totally unforgettable. That scent was tied to excitement, to collecting, and to the joy of flipping over a card and finding your favorite player. Super elastic bubble plastic. Now here's one that kids loved and parents worried about: super elastic bubble plastic. This stuff came in a little tube and it looked like colorful goo. You'd squeeze a glob onto one end of a straw, then blow to create these amazing plastic bubbles. But the smell? Oh, you couldn't forget it. It had this strong, almost nail polish-like odor, thanks to the chemicals inside, mainly polyvinyl acetate and acetone. The scent was sharp and unmistakable, and, honestly, a little dangerous. Kids weren't always careful, and if you inhaled instead of blowing, well, That's where the trouble started. Variations of it still exist today, but the smell isn't quite the same. Back then, it was part of the thrill. Silly Putty. Silly Putty was more than just a toy. It was a hands-on way to interact with the world, especially if you were a kid in the 1970s. It had a soft, rubbery texture and a smell that was instantly recognizable. Kind of waxy, kind of plasticky, and uniquely Silly Putty. But what really made it special was what it could do with newspaper comics. You'd press the putty down on a comic strip, lift it up, and like magic, you had a perfect mirror image of the cartoon. It was simple fun, but it felt like a superpower. Of course, the newspaper had its own scent too, an inky, papery aroma that filled the air when you unfolded the morning comics. In the 1970s, nearly every household got the paper delivered, and the ink used back then was different. It actually transferred, which made the Silly Putty trick possible. That chemical-rich newspaper smell is fading now, both because fewer people read print and because the ink formulas have changed. Kids today won't experience that scent, or the joy of pulling a comic image onto a blob of putty. But for those who lived it, that smell still brings back a wave of nostalgia. Linoleum flooring. Back in the 1970s, linoleum was the go-to choice for kitchen and bathroom floors. It was affordable, easy to clean, and came in all kinds of wild patterns and colors, from avocado green to harvest gold. But the one thing people remember most vividly? The smell. When linoleum was freshly installed, it filled the room with this strong, almost glue-like odor. It was a mix of synthetic materials and adhesives, and it stuck around for days. If you walked into a home where a new linoleum floor had just been laid, there was no mistaking it. That scent clung to the air, mixed with the warm vinyl and whatever cleaning product your parents used afterward. It wasn't necessarily pleasant, but it was unforgettable. Future floor wax. If your mom took pride in keeping the house spotless, and chances are she did, then you probably remember the smell of future floor wax. This stuff was a staple in many 1970s households. It came in a clear bottle and promised to keep floors gleaming like glass. And it delivered, but not without leaving a strong chemical scent behind. The smell of future wax was sharp and clean, with a little bit of ammonia and something else you couldn't quite name. It lingered for hours after she'd finished mopping, filling the house with the scent of clean. You might have even been told to stay off the floor until it dried, which made you tiptoe around the edges like it was wet paint. That scent became a symbol of Saturday chores, domestic order, and a time when everything was polished to a shine. Vanish Crystals. Before toilet cleaners came in bright blue gels and disposable wands, there were Vanish Crystals. This strong-smelling powder was dumped right into the toilet bowl, where it fizzed and foamed like a science experiment. And if you were anywhere nearby, you definitely smelled it. The scent was powerful, an intense, almost nose-stinging aroma of bleach and chemicals that let you know something was getting scrubbed clean. You might not have seen your mom actually pouring it in, but once that smell hit your nose, you knew exactly what chore was being done. It was the smell of a freshly cleaned bathroom, and like so many household scents from the 70s, it's tied to memories of growing up, home routines, and those little moments that somehow stuck with you. Fondue and Christmas tree. In the 1970s, having a fondue set was practically a sign that you'd made it. It was trendy, it was social, and it added a touch of elegance to any gathering, but it wasn't something you used every day. No. The fondue pot usually came out for special occasions, like birthdays, dinner parties, or especially around the holidays. And when it did, it brought with it a swirl of delicious smells. Depending on what you were making, That pot might be bubbling with rich melted cheese, creamy chocolate, or warm caramel. Each one had its own mouth-watering aroma, and when combined with the smell of the party, people, drinks, and the holiday cheer, it created a scent that was unforgettable. Now, if it was Christmas time, there's a good chance that scent mingled with the fresh, earthy smell of a live Christmas tree. Back then, most families went with real trees. That piney, forest-like smell filled the room, blending with the fondue to create a festive mix that you didn't even know you were going to miss one day. Today, many people opt for artificial trees, and while they're practical, they just don't give off that same magical holiday scent. Pink erasers. There's something oddly comforting about the smell of a pink eraser. If you grew up in the 1970s, chances are you had one in your pencil box or rolling around in your desk drawer. They had this soft, rubbery scent that stuck to your hands after a long math test or a big homework correction session. It was subtle, but unforgettable. You might not have noticed it at the time, but one sniff today will send you straight back to those school days when erasing a mistake felt like a fresh start. Thank you for watching our video. If you enjoyed it, don't hesitate to hit the like button below. If there's anything we can improve, take a moment to leave a comment. We're always looking to get better. Thanks so much. Magic markers. Before dry erase boards were a thing, teachers and students alike relied on magic markers. And boy, did they have a smell. You'd pop the cap, and instantly that strong, inky, solvent-like scent would hit your nose. Some kids loved it a little too much. Over the years, the formula has changed for safety reasons, so today's markers just don't have that same memorable punch. But for anyone who sat through a class doodling with one, that scent is burned into memory, along with your desk art. New denim. Ah, that first day of school after summer break, it had a vibe all its own. Everyone was buzzing with energy, excited to see friends, meet new teachers, and show off whatever cool new outfit they had picked out. And one scent seemed to follow you everywhere: the smell of brand new clothes. It was strongest in the hallways, where the mix of fresh fabrics filled the air like a cloud of anticipation. But one scent stood out above the rest: new denim. Back in the 1970s, jeans were built to last, and they smelled like it too. That heavy cotton had a distinct aroma, kind of earthy, a little musty, and strong enough to tell you those jeans hadn't been broken in yet. They were stiff, sometimes scratchy, and made a soft rustling sound when you walked. These days, jeans are blended with stretchy materials and go through all kinds of pre-washing to give them that already worn look. But those old-school jeans, they were raw, rugged, and full of personality. If you ever wore a pair fresh off the store shelf, you remember that smell. It was the scent of new beginnings, of fall mornings, and of stepping into a new grade with confidence. Card catalogs and library books. If you ever spent time in a school or public library during the 1970s, then you know there was a certain smell that hit you the second you walked through the doors. It was a mix of old paper, aged bindings, ink, and wooden shelves that had soaked up decades of stories. And right in the center of it all? The card catalog. Those long drawers filled with alphabetized index cards had their own subtle scent, papery, dusty, and a little woody from the drawers themselves. It was quiet work, flipping through those cards to find the right book, but it made you feel like a little detective on the trail of knowledge. That scent, the combination of library books and the catalog, stuck with you. It wasn't flashy or loud, but it was comforting. Kids today search with a few keystrokes, but we remember the satisfying shuffle of cards and the smell that came with learning the old-school way. Chalkboards. Chalkboards were the centerpiece of every classroom, and they had their own subtle scent. The chalk itself had a powdery mineral smell, and the erasers, especially the big felt ones, picked up a dusty scent that filled the air as teachers wiped away yesterday's lessons. Add to that the faint squeak of chalk against board, and you've got a full sensory memory. You didn't even have to be near the board. You could smell it as soon as you walked into the room. Rubber cement. Rubber cement was a school supply that felt more like a craft tool. Whether you were working on a poster or a diorama, that strong, tangy smell of rubber cement always stood out. It came in a little bottle with a brush under the cap, and the glue itself was stringy, messy, and oh so fun. Of course, teachers had to keep an eye out, because let's face it, some kids got a little too curious with that scent. One sniff of it today, and you're back in art class, glue-covered hands and all. Crayons. Crayons had one of the most distinct smells of any school supply, warm, waxy, and a little sweet. Open a fresh box, and that scent would rise up like a wave of childhood. Whether you were coloring inside the lines or going wild with a rainbow sun, that smell was always part of the process. There's a reason why so many adults still remember it with a smile. Crayons didn't just color our papers, they filled the air with the scent of imagination. Pencil sharpeners. Manual pencil sharpeners were mounted to nearly every classroom wall, and using one meant creating not just a sound, but a smell. That combination of shaved wood and graphite gave off a dry, earthy aroma that stuck around the room. The cranky grinding noise was unmistakable, but the smell was a quiet part of the memory. Mimeograph, Ditto machine. And then there was the king of all school scents, the mimeograph machine, also called the Ditto machine. When your teacher passed out those fresh purple inked papers, you could smell them before they even reached your desk. Sweet, sharp, and a little chemical-like, it was a scent every kid secretly loved. You'd hold that paper up to your nose and take a big whiff. It meant something new was happening. Maybe a quiz, maybe a worksheet, maybe just a fun activity. But whatever it was, that smell was part of the excitement. And sadly, it's a scent that's nearly extinct today. What's one smell from the 70s that you wish you could bottle up forever? Phone books and phone booths. Long before smartphones and contact lists, if you needed to look up someone's number, you reached for a phone book. And if you were out and about, you stepped into a phone booth, which was usually roasting in the summer sun. Inside, the heat baked everything, including that thick, worn phone book. The smell inside those booths was something else entirely. Warm paper, sun-heated plastic, a hint of ink, and maybe a trace of someone's leftover cologne or cigarette smoke. The phone book pages were flimsy, often torn or scribbled on, but they carried a scent of their own, musty, pulpy, and a little inky. Combined with the cramped glass booth, it became a scent that no kid growing up today will ever know. It wasn't pleasant, exactly, but it was unforgettable. It was the smell of communication before we carried the whole world in our pockets. Freshly opened pack of cigarettes. In the 1970s, smoking wasn't just common, it was practically a part of everyday life. You saw it everywhere. Restaurants, living rooms, office meetings, even airplane cabins. And for those who grew up in that era, one scent stands out. The smell of a freshly opened pack of cigarettes. Even if you never lit one yourself, you probably knew that aroma. There was something oddly sweet about it, almost spicy, thanks to the blend of dried tobacco leaves and the paper they were wrapped in. It was a dry, earthy scent, with a hint of something warm and comforting, at least before the smoke ever hit the air. That smell lived in coat pockets, handbags, car ashtrays, and kitchen drawers. You'd catch it when someone peeled back the foil, flipped the pack, and tapped out the first cigarette. Avon cosmetics and perfume samples. In the 1970s, the arrival of the Avon lady was a small but exciting event in many neighborhoods. She didn't just sell beauty products, she brought an experience. Carrying her little case packed with tiny sample bottles and pastel-colored creams, she'd invite you to open each lid, dab your wrist, and take in the dreamy scents of a different time. There was Skin So Soft with its soft, powdery warmth. Sweet Honesty, a floral and citrus blend, was a favorite among younger women. And for the men, Wild Country Cologne had a spicy, musky kick that clung to the skin and felt rugged. The smell of those samples filled living rooms, kitchens, and bedrooms across America. Each scent had its own personality, but together, they created an unmistakable perfume cloud that was pure 1970s. Powdery, floral, slightly sweet, and completely nostalgic. Even now, a single whiff of any of those old Avon fragrances can transport you right back to a time of rotary phones, shag carpet, and flipping through the latest Avon catalog with a smile. Gas station restrooms and motor oil. In the 1970s, stopping at a gas station wasn't the quick, clean pit stop we're used to today. It was a full sensory experience, and not always a glamorous one. The moment you stepped out of the car, you'd catch that heavy, greasy smell of motor oil and rubber tires baking under the sun. Add in the strong scent of hand-pumped gasoline. Yes, you had to do it yourself back then. And it created an unmistakable industrial aroma that defined roadside travel. But if you had to use the restroom, well, that was its own adventure. Gas station bathrooms in the 70s weren't exactly pristine. Open that metal door and you'd be hit with the stinging scent of harsh disinfectants, mixed with damp paper towels, rusting fixtures, and the cool dampness of concrete floors. It wasn't pleasant, but it was real, and oddly enough, people remember it. Permanent Wave, Perm, solution in beauty salons. If you were anywhere near a beauty salon in the 1970s, there's one smell you'll never forget: Perm solution. This was the decade of big, bouncy curls and sky-high volume, and getting a permanent wave was the way to do it. But oh, the smell. The moment you stepped inside the salon, you were greeted with that unmistakable, sharp and sour chemical scent. It had this eye-watering punch to it, like a mix of ammonia and something slightly burnt. It clung to the air, to the chairs, and especially to your hair. If you were the one getting the perm, that smell followed you home and stayed with you for days. And if you were just tagging along with your mom or sister, you still came out smelling like you'd been dipped in it. Despite the sting to your nose, there was something kind of exciting about it. It meant transformation. It meant looking fabulous. That smell was the background to gossip, hair dryers humming, and stacks of magazines. It was loud. Hair, loud styles, and unforgettable moments. One whiff today, and it all comes rushing back. Plastic lunchboxes with thermos bottles. If you were a kid in the 1970s, your lunch wasn't just food. It came in a box that told the world who you were. Whether it had superheroes, cartoon characters, your favorite band, or a scene from a TV show, that hard plastic lunchbox was a daily companion. And when you opened it up, the smell hit you right away. A scent that's almost impossible to describe, but instantly recognizable. It was a blend of cold sandwich bread, maybe some peanut butter and jelly, a bruised apple, and that metallic tang from the little thermos bottle tucked inside. The inside of the box always carried the faint smell of plastic, a little sweet, a little waxy, and it never quite went away. Even after you washed it, that scent lingered. Field trips, cafeteria tables, recess breaks. It was all wrapped up in that smell. It wasn't fancy, but it was familiar, comforting, and uniquely yours. Some lunchboxes even had leftover crumbs or a sticker inside from a different year. Today's soft-sided lunch bags just don't compare. That plastic box and the scent that came with it was part of growing up. The 1970s was a bold, wild decade full of groovy fashion, daring ideas, and some truly bizarre product flops. From exploding cars to edible shampoo, not everything was a hit. Curious, what went hilariously wrong? Let's rewind and uncover the strangest, most unforgettable failures the 70s left behind. Bell Picture Phone. Back in the 1960s, Bell Telephone, what we now know as AT&T, was dreaming big about the future of communication. At the 1964 World's Fair, they unveiled a bold new idea, the Model 1 picture phone. It was a prototype that let you see the person you were talking to, a concept that felt straight out of science fiction at the time. A few of these phones were actually used during the decade, giving people a glimpse of what video calling might one day look like. By 1970, Bell rolled out the first commercial version of the picture phone. But here's the catch. It came with a jaw-dropping price tag. You had to shell out $160 a month, and that's not even counting the per-minute call fees. Adjusted for inflation, that's over $1,200 a month today, even if you never made a single call. On top of that, it was designed for one-on-one conversations only, so no group chats or conference calls. They did try again, releasing a Model 2 and even targeting businesses in the 80s. In 1992, they introduced the Videophone 2000 for home use, but none of these versions gained traction. Ironically, in 2019, two Model 2s fetched over $7,500 at auction. Finally, a win, just 50 years too late. Betamax. When Sony launched Betamax in 1975, it looked like they had a winner on their hands. This was one of the first home video formats, and it offered impressive picture resolution and superior sound, far better than anything people had seen before. In fact, the quality was so good that TV stations and production studios continued to use Betamax tapes for professional work well into the 2000s. But as great as the technology was, Sony made one crucial mistake. They kept it to themselves. Sony refused to license the Betamax format to other electronics companies. That meant fewer manufacturers made Betamax players, and fewer movie titles were released in that format. Just 1 year later, in 1976, JVC introduced the VHS tape. While the quality wasn't quite as sharp, JVC was more flexible. They licensed VHS to any company that wanted in. Suddenly, there were more players, more tapes, and more options for consumers. The result? Betamax's dominance disappeared almost overnight. Its share of the home video market plummeted from 100% in 1975 to just 10% by 1988. Though it limped along for a few more years, the writing was on the wall. Betamax had lost the format war, not because it wasn't better, but because it wasn't open. Smell-O-Vision revivals. The idea of smell-O-Vision has always sounded like something out of a sci-fi movie. Why just watch a film when you can smell it too? While the original concept popped up in the 1960s, the 1970s saw a few quirky attempts to bring it back. The goal was to create a fully immersive movie experience by pumping scents into theaters or even homes to match what was happening on screen. Think popcorn during a concession stand scene or ocean breeze during a beach shot. Sounds fun, right? Not quite. In practice, the technology was clunky and unreliable. Scents often arrived too early, too late, or not at all. Worse, once the smells were released, they lingered, and not in a good way. Imagine sitting through a dramatic love scene while the room still smells like chili dogs from 2 scenes earlier. Audiences were more distracted than entertained, and theater owners weren't thrilled about having to install extra equipment that didn't even work well. Smell-o-vision revivals quietly fizzled out by the late 70s. It turned out people preferred watching stories unfold with their eyes and ears, not their noses. Today, it's mostly remembered as a strange footnote in the long, weird history of movie gimmicks. 8-track tape cleaning kits. Back in the 1970s, 8-track tapes were all the rage. Whether you were cruising in your car or jamming at home, chances are you had a pile of bulky tapes and a player to match. With all that use, companies saw a golden opportunity and rushed to sell 8-track cleaning kits, little packages filled with brushes, sponges, sprays, and promises of better sound quality and longer tape life. The pitch was simple: keep your tapes clean, and they'll last longer. But the reality? These kits rarely worked as advertised. Some of the brushes were too rough, the sprays too sticky, and the sponges often did more harm than good. In many cases, the cleaners left residue behind or scratched delicate parts of the tape, actually speeding up the wear instead of preventing it. It didn't take long for word to spread. People realized these kits were mostly gimmicks, and many just stopped using them altogether. By the late 70s and early 80s, compact cassettes had started to take over, and the demand for 8-track accessories quickly faded. Cube Interactive TV. In 1977, Warner Cable tried to revolutionize the way we watched television with a bold new system called Cube. It wasn't just about flipping through channels anymore. Cube aimed to make television interactive. Viewers could press buttons on a special remote to vote in live polls, choose how shows unfolded, or even influence what kind of music videos played next. It was basically a glimpse into the future, decades before streaming and smart TVs. The technology behind Cube was cutting edge for the time, but it came with a price, literally and figuratively. The system was expensive to install, glitchy to operate, and honestly, a bit confusing for the average family just looking to unwind in front of the TV. It launched in a few test markets, and while some people were fascinated by the possibilities, most found it too complicated or just didn't see the need for it. By the early 1980s, the excitement had fizzled out. The cost of maintaining the system and the lack of widespread adoption spelled the end for Cube. Still, it deserves credit for being one of the earliest attempts at interactive television, way ahead of its time, even if it never made it past the pilot stage of success. Do you think any of these failed products were ahead of their time? Why or why not? The Pet Rock. In 1975, one of the strangest fads in retail history took the world by surprise: the Pet Rock. Yes, it was exactly what it sounds like: a plain, smooth stone, packaged neatly in a cardboard box with air holes and a witty care manual. No feeding, no walking, no mess. It was the perfect pet, and somehow, people couldn't get enough of it. The genius behind the idea was advertising executive Gary Dahl, who turned a 1-cent rock into a $4 novelty sensation. It was meant to be a tongue-in-cheek joke about how demanding real pets were. And for a brief moment, the joke landed perfectly. Millions of pet rocks were sold in just a few months. It was cheap, quirky, and hilarious, especially as a gag gift. But like most one-joke wonders, the humor wore off fast. By early 1976, people realized they had literally bought a rock. No bells, no whistles, just a glorified paperweight. The craze collapsed almost overnight, and store shelves quickly cleared out the remaining stock. While it was a massive financial success for its creator, the Pet Rock became a symbol of how short-lived and absurd some trends can be. It's a classic example of 1970s fad culture: brilliant, bizarre, and gone in a blink. Swing bike. In 1975, a wild new ride hit the streets: the swing bike. Designed and patented by Ralph Belden just a year earlier, This wasn't your average bicycle. What made it stand out? It had two steering points, one in the front, like a regular bike, and a second one in the rear, just under the seat. That meant you could steer both wheels independently, making for some crazy curvy moves that no standard bike could pull off. The swing bike was all about flair, not function. It wasn't built for commuting or long-distance rides. This was a stunt bike, meant to catch eyes and turn heads. Riders could swerve in an S shape, or even keep one wheel on the sidewalk and the other in the street, pulling off tricks that looked like something out of a circus act. But while it looked cool, it wasn't exactly easy to control. The dual steering system made the bike unstable for beginners, and plenty of riders ended up wiping out. That unpredictability and the risk of injury meant it never caught on with a wide audience. After just a few years on the market, the swing bike was discontinued in 1978. Thank you for watching. To continue with more content, comment yes to let us know you're still following. Sauna hot pants. Hot pants were already a sizzling trend in the 1970s, but someone had the bright idea to take things one step further and inflate them. Enter the sauna hot pants, a bizarre blend of fashion and wishful thinking. These puffy, inflatable shorts promised a miracle. Melt away stubborn body fat without lifting a finger. No dieting, no exercise. Just sit back in your favorite recliner, maybe munch on some cookies, and let the magic happen. The theory was that by trapping heat and making you sweat, these pants would target problem areas like the hips, thighs, and belly. You'd wear them around the house while watching TV, and supposedly, you'd start shrinking in just a few days. It sounded too good to be true, and it absolutely was. While several companies jumped on the bandwagon and released their own versions, all of them failed miserably. People quickly realized that sweating a lot didn't equal actual fat loss, and wearing inflatable shorts around the house was neither comfortable nor effective. Plus, if you were a guy, you had to hope the only thing disappearing wasn't something you'd rather keep. Sauna hot pants are now a hilarious footnote in the long history of weird weight loss gimmicks, proof that there really are no shortcuts to getting in shape. Twist and tone. The 1970s had no shortage of wacky weight loss inventions, and one of the most memorable was the twist and tone. This gadget promised to help you shed pounds and tone your waistline, all while having fun. Unlike traditional workouts, this one didn't involve running, lifting, or sweating buckets. No, all you had to do was stand on it and twist your body from side to side. Easy, portable, and supposedly effective. The device looked suspiciously like a kitchen Lazy Susan, just a round disc that spun in place. You could use it at home, at the office, even during TV time. Just a few minutes a day, and your belly fat would start to melt. Or so they claimed. It was marketed as a miracle solution for people who hated real exercise. But here's the truth. It didn't work. Sure, it might get you moving a little, but it wasn't going to replace cardio or strength training anytime soon. Plus, people felt pretty silly using it, twisting their hips in the middle of the living room, like they were stuck in a dance routine gone wrong. Though versions of the twist and tone had been around since the 60s, none of them ever took off. Sansui quadraphonic sound. In the early 1970s, home audio was a big deal. Most people were still using basic two-speaker setups, but Sansui had a vision for something more immersive, something that could bring music alive from all directions. Enter the Sansui quadraphonic sound system. Released in 1972, this 4-channel audio system promised to revolutionize home listening by delivering sound from the front, back, left, and right. It was a totally new experience compared to traditional stereo. Priced at $200 back then, about $1,200 in today's money, the system wasn't cheap, but it was groundbreaking. Sansui wasn't alone for long. Other audio companies jumped in, offering their own quadraphonic setups. Some even came with joystick controls, letting users steer the sound around the room for a fully custom listening experience. Big-name artists loved it. Aerosmith, Eric Clapton, the Eagles, and others released special albums mixed specifically for 4-channel playback. But while the technology was exciting, the average consumer just wasn't ready to upgrade their entire setup for 2 extra speakers. Adoption was slow, and by 1978, the quadraphonic dream quietly faded out. The music industry soon embraced digital recording instead. Today, working Sansui quadraphonic receivers still fetch around $200, a nostalgic piece of sound history. Clairol yogurt shampoo. In the late 1970s, natural ingredients were all the rage. People wanted cleaner, healthier lifestyles, and that trend spilled over into the beauty aisle. Suddenly, products with honey, lemon, aloe, and herbal extracts were everywhere. So, Clairol decided to jump in with something a little creamier. In 1979, they launched yogurt shampoo, banking on the idea that if yogurt was healthy for your body, it must be great for your hair, too. The packaging leaned hard into the natural vibe. Soft colors, images of yogurt, and text that made it sound more like a snack than a shampoo. And that's where things started to go sideways. Consumers were confused. Really confused. Some people thought it was actual yogurt. Others didn't know whether to put it on their hair or in a bowl with fruit. Believe it or not, there were even reports of folks trying to eat it. Despite Clairol's good intentions, yogurt shampoo was a marketing misfire. It didn't help that the product itself wasn't particularly memorable in terms of performance. Within a short time, it was pulled from the shelves. These days, it's remembered more as a quirky footnote in shampoo history than a beauty breakthrough. Proof that sometimes being too natural can backfire, especially in a bottle. Laserdisc. Long before DVDs took over living rooms, there was the Laserdisc, a shiny, oversized disc that looked like a giant CD. First introduced in 1978, it was a bold step forward in home entertainment. It delivered sharper video and crisper sound than the bulky VHS tapes most people were using. At the time, it felt like the future of movie watching was finally here. But despite its technical advantages, Laserdisc came with some major drawbacks. First off, you couldn't record on it. That was a big deal back then because VHS tapes let you easily record shows off TV. Laserdiscs were strictly for playback, no flexibility. And they weren't cheap either. The players and the discs themselves cost a lot more than VHS, which made them hard to justify for the average consumer. The format hung around through the 80s and even tried to make a comeback in the 90s. Movie buffs loved them for the quality and the early access to directors' commentaries and special features. But once the DVD arrived, with better quality, lower prices, and recordable options, it was game over. World Football League. Back in 1974, a bold new challenger stepped onto the field to take on the NFL, the World Football League, or WFL for short. With big dreams and even bigger promises, the WFL aimed to create an international football empire that would rival, and maybe even replace, the National Football League. But as it turns out, ambition doesn't always equal success. The league kicked off with 13 teams scattered across the United States, including one all the way out in Honolulu, Hawaii. The name World Football League made it sound global, but in reality, it never expanded beyond U.S. borders. Despite a flashy start, things unraveled quickly. Attendance was poor, money ran out, and many players were never paid on time. Even star athletes who had been lured away from the NFL with promises of big contracts ended up caught in a financial mess. The WFL barely completed its first full season in 1974. The second season in 1975 was cut short when the league folded midway through. In just under 2 years, the dream of world football dominance came crashing down. Gerber singles. In 1974, Gerber, famous for feeding generations of babies, decided it was time to grow up, sort of. The company came up with what they thought was a groundbreaking idea: baby food for adults. They called it Gerber Singles, and the concept was aimed at young, single adults who lived alone and might not want to cook. The idea was convenience, pre-packaged, ready-to-eat meals in little glass jars, just like what babies ate. Except now, it was for grown-ups. There was just one problem. Nobody wanted it. The foods were pureed meats and vegetables, the same soft, mushy textures made for toothless infants, but now offered to adults who definitely had other meal options. Imagine opening a jar of ground beef paste or blended peas for dinner. Not exactly appetizing. People were confused, a little grossed out, and not interested in trading their TV dinners or sandwiches for something that looked like it belonged in a high chair. Gerber had completely misread the market. Adults didn't want convenience in that form. They wanted something with flavor, texture, and, well, dignity. Gerber Singles bombed hard and quickly disappeared from store shelves. Downy Flake Toaster Eggs. In 1972, Downy Flake, a company best known for its frozen breakfast foods, decided to take a shot at reinventing the morning meal. Riding on the success of quick and easy items like Pop-Tarts and toaster waffles, they introduced toaster eggs. The idea? A frozen egg patty that could be tossed into your toaster and ready to eat in minutes. Sounds convenient, right? Well, in theory, maybe. But in reality, these things looked more like hockey pucks than food. Round, thick, and oddly dense, they didn't exactly scream appetizing. While the concept of a fast, hot breakfast had merit, toaster eggs just didn't hit the mark in taste, texture, or appearance. People were already iffy about pre-cooked eggs to begin with, and running them through a toaster only made it weirder. Consumers weren't impressed, and sales tanked quickly. By 1975, just 3 years after their debut, toaster eggs were pulled from grocery shelves, vanishing almost as quickly as they appeared. It was a bold experiment, but one that proved breakfast innovation needed more than just convenience. It needed flavor and familiarity too. Polaroid Polavision. Polaroid was once the king of instant photography. Their cameras, like the SX70 and One Step, were everywhere in the 70s, snapping, developing, and printing photos right in your hand. Riding high on that success, Polaroid decided to take a bold leap into the world of home movies. In 1977, they introduced the Polavision system, hoping to take on Kodak, who had already locked down the market with their Super 8 film. The Polavision was pretty innovative for its time. It used a unique film cartridge that looked kind of like a mini video cassette. After filming, you could develop the footage within minutes using a special tabletop viewer. You could even remove the reel and play it on a standard Super 8 projector, which was a clever touch. But despite the cool tech, the system flopped. Why? Well, for starters, the image quality was weak. You had to film in super bright lighting, or the results looked dark and washed out. The colors were dull, and unlike Kodak's Super 8 cameras, the Polavision couldn't record sound at all. That was a big deal breaker. Sales never took off, and by 1979, Polaroid pulled the plug. These days, you can find Polavision gear on eBay for as little as $25. Proof that not every big idea sticks. Which of these 1970s product flops do you actually remember using or seeing in person? Clackers toy ban. In the early 1970s, clackers were everywhere. Kids couldn't get enough of them. The toy was simple: 2 heavy acrylic balls attached to either end of a string. The goal? Swing them up and down until they slam together above and below your hand in a rhythmic clacking motion. It was loud, flashy, and surprisingly tricky to master, which only made it more fun at first. But this innocent-looking toy came with a dangerous downside. Those balls weren't indestructible. When they clacked too hard, or at the wrong angle, they could shatter like glass, sending sharp shards flying in all directions. Reports started rolling in. Kids with chipped teeth, cuts, and even eye injuries. What started as a playground craze quickly turned into a public safety nightmare. By the mid-1970s, the US government stepped in and banned clackers from being sold. Parents were relieved, and toy stores cleared their shelves. The clacker craze ended as quickly as it had begun. TV hat. In an era before smartphones and streaming, the TV hat tried to bring personal entertainment to the next level, one awkward step at a time. Launched in the late 1970s, this strange invention combined a baseball cap with a small pouch that held a mini television screen. The screen dangled right in front of your eyes, allowing you to watch your favorite shows, hands-free, anywhere you went. The concept sounded futuristic on paper. Imagine watching TV while lounging in the park, riding the bus, or even walking around. But in practice, it was anything but cool. The TV hat looked absurd, like something out of a low-budget sci-fi movie. You had to squint into a tiny screen mere inches from your face, which often led to eye strain, headaches, and a pretty uncomfortable viewing experience. And let's not forget the screen itself. By modern standards, it was low quality, grainy, and difficult to see in anything but perfect lighting. Add in the bulkiness of the hat and the clunky wires running down to a battery pack or portable tuner, and you've got a recipe for failure. The TV hat never gained any real popularity and quickly faded into obscurity. Today, it's remembered as one of those oddball inventions that tried to predict the future, but totally missed the mark. Ford Pinto. The Ford Pinto rolled out in 1971, right as America was grappling with an oil crisis. Gas prices were soaring, and people were desperate for smaller, fuel-efficient cars. Ford saw an opportunity and jumped in with the Pinto, a compact car that was cheap, lightweight, and easy on gas. It was marketed as the perfect solution for cost-conscious drivers. But behind that affordable price tag was a deadly design flaw. The Pinto's gas tank was placed in a vulnerable spot at the rear of the car. In low-speed rear-end collisions, it had a disturbing tendency to rupture and explode. Internal Ford documents later revealed that the company knew about the danger, but made a cold calculation. It would cost less to pay legal settlements than to fix the issue. When the truth came out, the public was outraged. The Pinto quickly became a symbol of corporate negligence, and the scandal was a massive PR disaster for Ford. Lawsuits piled up, consumer trust plummeted, and the car that was supposed to be a savior of the 70s economy turned into one of the decade's most infamous failures. AMC Pacer. When the AMC Pacer hit the market in 1975, it was billed as the car of the future. With its huge curved windows and wide bubble-like body, it looked like nothing else on the road. AMC wanted to create a compact car that felt roomy on the inside, kind of like a small car with the space of a big one. People quickly nicknamed it the fishbowl on wheels, and the name stuck. But while the design was unique, it came with a lot of baggage. The Pacer was heavy, especially for a compact car, and that made it sluggish and inefficient. Not great during the 1970s fuel crisis. The rounded, futuristic shape also didn't sit well with everyone. Some thought it looked cool and ahead of its time, but many others just thought it looked weird. The interior space was impressive, and it did gather a small cult following, especially after appearing in the movie Wayne's World. But that wasn't enough to save it. The Pacer struggled with sales, performance issues, and a design that just didn't catch on with the masses. By 1980, production had stopped. Today, the AMC Pacer is remembered as a bold experiment in car design, a vehicle that dared to be different, but just didn't quite deliver? Which of these scents brought back the strongest memories for you? Let me know in the comments. And if you enjoyed this trip down memory lane, check out the other videos in our series. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and share who remembers with someone who'd love the smell of nostalgia. Thanks so much for watching.